The world watched on March 12, 2025, as Russian President Vladimir Putin stepped onto the front lines in Kursk. He was clad in military fatigues, a stark departure from his usual tailored suits. This was not just a visit, it was a statement. Putin was sending a message of solidarity with his troops, a message of strength and resolve. The backdrop of the Kursk conflict, a year-long struggle that has become a focal point in the Russia-Ukraine war, only amplified the message. Putin's visit was more than just symbolic. He came bearing demands. He declared that captured Ukrainian soldiers in the region would be treated as terrorists under Russian law. This sent shockwaves through the international community. The Geneva Conventions, the cornerstone of international humanitarian law, seemed to be cast aside. Putin went further, stating that foreign mercenaries fighting alongside Ukrainian forces would be shown no mercy. He claimed they were not protected under international law. The visit to Kursk was strategically timed. Ukrainian forces had managed to hold on to portions of the region since the summer of 2024. This small sliver of land became a crucial bargaining chip in the ongoing peace negotiations. For Ukraine, it represented leverage, a way to force concessions from Russia. Putin's presence on the front lines, however, signaled his determination to reclaim every inch of contested territory. Putin's visit to the front lines was a carefully calculated move. It was a display of power, a signal to Ukraine and its allies that Russia was prepared to escalate the conflict. The message was clear: surrender or face the consequences. Putin's demands for the treatment of captured Ukrainian soldiers were met with outrage from the international community. Human rights organizations condemned his statements, calling them a blatant violation of international law. The Ukrainian government, already grappling with a brutal invasion, vowed to fight on. They accused Putin of war crimes and promised to hold him accountable for his actions. The presence of foreign fighters in Ukraine further complicated the situation. These individuals, many of them veterans of conflicts in the Middle East and elsewhere, had flocked to Ukraine to join the fight against Russian aggression. Putin's threat to disregard their protected status under the Geneva Conventions raised serious concerns about their safety and well-being. It also highlighted the global nature of the conflict, with individuals from around the world drawn into the fight. Despite Putin's threats, the Ukrainian resistance remained resolute. They understood the strategic importance of Kursk. It was more than just territory. It was a symbol of their defiance, a testament to their determination to resist Russian aggression. They had fought hard to hold on to this small piece of land, and they were not about to give it up without a fight. The conflict in Kursk had become a brutal war of attrition. Both sides dug in, their trenches and fortifications scarring the landscape. The fighting was fierce, with heavy casualties reported on both sides, yet despite the mounting losses, neither side seemed willing to back down. The fate of Kursk, it seemed, would determine the future of the war. As the fighting in Kursk raged on, diplomatic efforts to end the conflict continued. The United States, eager to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis, stepped up its mediation efforts. A U.S. delegation met with Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia, hoping to broker a ceasefire. The proposal called for a 30-day truce, a temporary pause in the fighting to allow for negotiations. Putin, however, remained skeptical of the ceasefire proposal. He saw it as a ploy by the United States and its allies to buy time for Ukraine to regroup and rearm. He argued that a temporary truce would only prolong the conflict and that any lasting solution required addressing Russia's security concerns. He demanded guarantees that Ukraine would never join NATO, a concession the West was unwilling to make. The breakdown of the ceasefire talks had immediate consequences. The United States, frustrated by Putin's intransigence and determined to bolster Ukraine's defenses, announced the resumption of military aid. This marked a significant escalation in U.S. involvement in the conflict. The aid package included advanced weaponry, intelligence sharing, and training for Ukrainian forces. The resumption of U.S. aid was a lifeline for the Ukrainian government. It provided them with the resources they desperately needed to continue the fight against Russia. The aid also sent a clear message to Putin. The West was not going to stand idly by while Russia attempted to redraw the map of Europe by force. Putin's actions in Ukraine were not simply about territorial conquest. They were part of a larger strategy, a vision for a new world order in which Russia would reclaim its former glory. He believed that the West, weakened by internal divisions and economic decline, was no longer capable of challenging Russian power. Putin's vision extended beyond Ukraine. He sought to reassert Russian influence in the former Soviet republics, many of which had drifted towards the West in the years following the collapse of the Soviet Union. He also aimed to undermine NATO, which he saw as an existential threat to Russia's security. The conflict in Ukraine was just one battle in this larger geopolitical struggle. The international community found itself at a crossroads. The war in Ukraine had shattered the post-Cold War order, raising fears of a new era of global conflict. The lines between East and West had been redrawn, and the world watched nervously as the two sides edged closer to confrontation. The conflict in Ukraine was about more than just territory. It was about the future of Europe, the balance of power in the 21st century, and the fundamental principles of international law and order. The world held its breath, wondering what the future held and praying for a peaceful resolution to the crisis.